Alright, yeah! Thank God for fantasy football. I'm Buster Brown, and the show, it's called Redemption Rehab. And if you tuned in today, it's for one reason, and that's to start winning championships in fantasy football. Here we are on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. And today, we're talking about the upcoming NFL draft and the rookie players coming into the NFL in the 2020 season at every position. So buckle up, get out your popcorn, and let's head over to the chalkboard
and check out the facts.
Okay, here we are on one of my favorite websites, drafttech.com. We're doing our NFL preview show, and we always start out with our number one priority, heading into our fantasy league drafts, and that's checking out who the best running backs are coming in to the NFL from college in the 2020 NFL season. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to preview some of the rookie running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. We're going to break them down into tiers. Tier 1, which is your elite players that you're probably going to be taking in your drafts in this upcoming season. And then we're going to break down the other players in the Tier 2, which are your players you should keep an eye on to see how they do in the preseason. And maybe they'll be available on your waiver wire later in the season. So let's get started with our running backs coming into the NFL in 2020. Our Tier 1 guys are these 4 guys right here. All 4 of these guys could possibly be taken in the first or second round of this year's draft, and they might be immediate starters depending upon the team that drafts them. You've got Draft Tech's number 1 running back this week, a week before the draft starts, and you can see right here, this is their overall ranking down here. So the 29th overall player in this year's draft is DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. You can see his height and weight here down this column here, and they like him as the number 1 running back in this year's draft, which I kind of like DeAndre Swift. The guy I really like is this guy, Jonathan Taylor. He had nearly 3 2,000-yard rushing seasons. You can see he's a big boy right here, and he was really fast at the combine. I think he could possibly be the best running back in this class, someone you should be drafting in your redraft leagues, your dynasty leagues. Keep an eye out for this guy on Daily Fantasy Sports. He's going to have a big year. And the other 2 guys in our Tier 1 is that we really like is J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's 5'9", 209, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He won a national championship with LSU. These guys could all go in the first or second round of this year's draft. They just have to be able to pick up the blitz and stuff like that from safeties and linebackers, and you'll see them get the play right away. As far as your Tier 2 guys, you know, it's basically these 4 guys right here. Zach Moss, A.J. Dillon, Cam Akers, who was a highly ranked kid out of college. He was probably the number 1 or number 2 running back coming out of high school, and it didn't pan out for him like he thought it would down there in Florida State. They didn't have some very good teams, but he is also a very good running back. And last guy I want to show you is Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt. He can also tote the ball. So these are basically the 8 guys you need to know about going into this year's NFL draft in 2020. Let's show you the statistics from this guy right here, Jonathan Taylor, on a website called sportsreference.com. Okay, here we are on one of my favorite websites, sportsreference.com. They will give you any statistic from any player, whether it's professional or college, and it doesn't matter the sport. Football, baseball, basketball, you name it, they'll look them up for you and they'll tell you what his stats are. Today, we're looking at Jonathan Taylor, running back from Wisconsin. He had a great career. Let's check out the stats. You can see right here the years. He played 3 years in Wisconsin, And this was the conference. You can see the classes, and at running back, and you can see this column here, which is really good, the games he played in. He played just about every game. But here's what we're really looking at, the rushing attempts right here. We want to see what he did in these columns here. As you can see, he had a lot of rushing attempts. He ran for almost 2,000 yards in all 3 seasons for a grand total down here in yellow for 6,174. That's pretty good for a college career for a running back. And this is impressive. His yards per carry average was 6.7. It's almost, that's huge. And you can see right here he had 50 touchdowns in 3 years. 13 his freshman year, 16 his sophomore year, and his junior year he had 21. That's impressive. That's why we really like him as the first running back to be taken in this year's draft. Someone you should have your eye on in fantasy football. And look what he did receiving. You can see right here in this column right here. Didn't do much his first 2 years with just 8 receptions, but you can see he did manage to catch 26 balls his senior year. That means he can, he's learning how to catch the ball, which is good. And there's his totals down here in yellow. For his career, he did have 5 TDs. And here's his yards from scrimmage in 3 years at Wisconsin. And you can see right here, his total TDs in this column right here was 55. That's why we think Jonathan Taylor is going to be the first running back taken in this year's NFL draft. And that's why you need to know who he is in fantasy football. Because I can tell you right now, I think this guy's going to have a big year, dependent upon who drafts him. Let's head back over to Draft Check and let's check out some of the wide receivers coming into the 2020 NFL Draft that you need to know about for fantasy football. Okay, here we are back on drafttech.com checking out the wide receivers in the 2020 NFL Draft. Our Tier 1 wide receivers start with CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma, and we're going to go down here to their 24th overall player, Justin Jefferson. These are our Tier 1 elite wide receivers. Every single one of these guys could go drafted in the first round of this year's draft, which means you need to know who they are in fantasy football because they're going to be drafted in your redraft leagues and especially in your dynasty leagues and have a chance to play on your daily fantasy sports on Fanduel or Draft Kings. So pay attention, man. These are the guys you're going to need to know about for years to come. I really like CeeDee Lamb. He's my number 1 receiver also. As you can see right here, Draft Tech has him at number 9, followed by Jerry Jeudy at number 10 out of Alabama. Henry Ruggs is another really good wide receiver. I also like T. Higgins out of Clemson. He's played well down there for 3 years. And Justin Jefferson, who just won a national championship with LSU. You saw him play against Oklahoma with his many touchdown game. I'm going to tell you what, this kid looked like a baller. So these guys are going to be the guys in our Tier 1 elite group of guys you need to know about heading into this draft because they're the ones going to be playing on your fantasy football leagues this year. Maybe even get drafted in some of your leagues. Our Tier 2 guys start down here with this guy, Shenault, Mims, and Ayuk. Look, these guys are no slouches. There's a chance they could also go in the first round, but it's more likely they're going to go on day 2 of the NFL draft. They're really good, and they have a chance to be drafted in your leagues this year in fantasy football. What we're not mentioning is a couple guys you should know about in the slot. There are 2 more guys I have in my Tier 2. The 2 guys that we have in our Tier 2 that aren't on this page are Jalen Reagor and KJ Hamler. You need to know who those 2 guys are. Why are they important? Because they're going to be drafted in the second day of the NFL draft, and they play the slot position, which isn't mentioned here. These are mostly wideouts. So remember those 2 guys' names. So let's go take a look at the stats of my favorite wide receiver in this year's draft. This guy right here, and that's CeeDee Lamb of Oklahoma. I really like him a lot. I like all these guys in Tier 1. But the guy I think is going to be drafted first in this year's NFL draft is this guy. Let's go to sportsreference.com and check out some of his stats from college. Okay, here we are back on sportsreference.com checking out my favorite wide receiver in this year's draft, and his name is CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. These are his stats from college. Why is he so impressive? Let's see. Down here at Oklahoma, the school he went to in the 3 years he was there, played for 2 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield in 2017 out of Oklahoma, and in 2018 it was Kyler Murray. In 2019, Jalen Hurts came in second in the Heisman Trophy balloting, and this kid, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, played a big part in their careers while those quarterbacks were in college. That's why we really like him in the pros. Should be the first wide receiver taken in this year's draft. Let's check out some of his stats in his career. As you can see right here, he played in the Big 12. Right here, you can see right here, these are his receptions for 3 years. 46, 65, and the yardage right here. This is a great 1,000-yard seasons. That's pretty good for a kid in college. Some of his plays, these average plays right here, were huge, spectacular touchdowns. So if you get a chance to Google this guy, you're going to see him play some great college football. And you can see right here, he does score TDs, 7 his freshman year, sophomore, and junior. He had 14. Doesn't really rush the ball much. He tried to, and managed to get 1 TD on 9 carries. And here's his yards from scrimmage over the 3 years he played there. Basically had 182 plays, had 3,312 yards total, rushing and receiving, with an average of about 18 yards on every play. He makes big plays at wide receiver, and that's why everybody really likes him. That's why I like him. And as you can see right here, he scored 33 touchdowns while in college. He's going to go first in the NFL as wide receiver in this year's draft. That's why you need to know about him. And he's going to be taken in all your fantasy football leagues. Keep an eye on where he's drafted, along with those other Tier 1 wide receivers and the Tier 2 wide receivers, because the NFL said we could have as many as 30 wide receivers taken in this year's draft in the first 4 rounds. And you're going to know who they are. You're going to find yourself at a disadvantage late in the draft. Let's head back over to Draft Tech and check out some of the tight ends coming into the league in 2020. Okay, here we are back on drafttech.com checking out some of the tight ends coming into the league in 2020. Well, I don't have any Tier 1 tight ends. This is not the best tight end class, although there are a lot of guys that can develop into great tight ends. You should know that tight ends usually don't do well in the NFL their first or rookie year. Just as the case for years. They don't pan out very often their first year because they got to learn how to block. I mean, some of the people they're blocking are a lot bigger, a lot faster, a lot stronger, and they have to learn how to pick up blitzes, read coverages. They have to learn how to catch the ball against great defensive linebackers and defensive backs. So I don't have any Tier 1 tight ends. I do have 2 Tier 2 tight ends I do like, and so does Draft Tech here with Hunter Bryant out of Washington and Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. Both of these guys can develop in the next couple years into good tight ends, so keep an eye on them to see where they're drafted. They're big, they're strong, they got to learn the game, and it's going to take a while. Those are my Tier 2 tight ends this year, and we're going to break down our Tier 3 tight ends right here. I do like Adam Troutman. He had a good career over at Dayton. So did Chase Claypool. He's a wide receiver, might transition to a tight end. We'll see how he had a great combine. We'll see how he pans out in college. I'm not suggesting you draft any of these guys in your redraft leagues or dynasty leagues. Harrison Bryant's another pretty good tight end. He had a great career down there in Florida Atlantic. I really like him a lot. Bryson Hopkins' dad played in the NFL. He played for like the Tennessee Titans or the Houston Oilers. He was a left tackle. Brad Hopkins, I think, is his name. He's a Hall of Famer. So this kid knows a lot about the NFL. He could turn into something special in the next couple years. And the last guy I want to show you is this Albert Okwuegbunam. I can tell you right now, man, that's a tough last name, but he's a tough football player. He didn't have Drew Lock throwing the ball to him at Missouri when he came out, but the couple years prior to that, he played well. So keep an eye out for Albert O. That's what they're going to be calling him in the NFL. So those are your top tight ends in my tiers 2 and 3. Like I said, there are no tier 1 tight ends in this draft. I would consider drafting none of these guys in my redraft leagues, and I also would not take any of them in my dynasty leagues unless you see something maybe in the preseason that would show they're going to be a player. But it would probably take a couple years for any of these guys to start producing numbers on a regular basis. You're much better off in your fantasy football going with your second or third year tight ends. We've mentioned them in our draft preview show in the past. Players like Mike Gesicki is a good sleeper pick. And you can go in there, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, are all guys going into their second or third year are guys that are going to be much better off taking in your redraft leagues late in your draft as opposed to these guys. We're not going to show you any statistics on any of these guys because we don't want you to draft them. If you want to, you can go check out our 2020 top rookie tight ends coming into the league. We show you all these guys and their stats. You can maybe find that on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. You could check us out on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. And we have stuff that shows statistics on all these tight ends, all the running backs, all the wide receivers and quarterbacks that you might want to draft in this year's draft. When you get a chance, check it out. Let's head over and check out some of the quarterbacks coming into the league this year out of college in the 2020 NFL Draft. Okay, here we are back checking out some of the quarterbacks coming into the NFL in 2020 out of college. None better than this guy right here, Joe Burrow out of LSU. You can see right here, Draft Tech has them ranked as the number 2 overall player, followed up by this quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. That's a tough name too. He's their number 4 overall player. These guys could both be taken in the first 5 picks of this year's draft. They're worth considering maybe late in a redraft league, later end of your drafts. I wouldn't consider taking any of them early. In dynasty leagues, I would definitely be pulling the trigger on these guys. These are guys going to be around for a long time, so you might want to consider one of these 2 guys. They're my tier 1 quarterbacks going into this year's draft, followed by these 2 guys right here. Justin Herbert out of Oregon. You can come over here and see the height and weight on some of these guys. This guy is 6'6", 236 pounds. He's a senior. He stayed for his senior year. And he also has a chance to be a top 10 pick in this year's draft. I have these 2 guys, Justin Herbert and Jordan Love out of Utah State, as my tier 1A guys. Like I like them a lot. They're going to be high draft choices, probably first round kind of talent, these 4 guys here. So this is tier 1 and this is like tier 1B kind of thing, the next class. So I do like these 4 guys. They're going to go in the draft and you might see them play. I don't know if I would take either one of these 2 guys in a redraft league. Probably not going to get drafted in any leagues that you're in. If you're a dynasty guy that has to take a quarterback because you need one to develop in your team, other than the top 2, I don't know if I could possibly see taking one of these 2, but maybe not. But I do like these 4 quarterbacks, and you can see this guy's ranked the 17th overall best player. And so you can see that's why these guys have value. These next 3 quarterbacks right here, Jason Eason, you can see right here, he had a tumultuous career, started out at Georgia, went to Washington, missed a year, got caught up in some of the, good times down there in Georgia and ended up transferring to Washington. He's a big boy. Jake Fromm right here out of Georgia. You can see he's moving up. He had a good career in college, doesn't have a strong arm. He needs a good running game. So whoever drafts him, if they have a good running game, somewhere like San Francisco where they like to run the ball, this kid can perform. So I do like him a lot. And the guy right here that's really undervalued, and I don't know why no one's talking more about him, is Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma. This is the kid that started out at Alabama, went to Oklahoma, and finished in 2019 as the 2nd place finisher next to Joe Burrow, the number 1 quarterback, in the Heisman Trophy. So let's take a look at Jalen Hurts' career and why we like him so much for all you dynasty people out there, because his stats are incredible. Okay, here we are back on sportsreference.com, checking out one of my favorite players in college. And for all you Dynasty people out there, he's my sleeper pick for you at quarterback, and his name is Jalen Hurts. He not only had great passing stats, he had great rushing stats to go along with it. Let's dive into it and check it out. As you can see right here, he played 4 years in college. Started out at Alabama, was in a national championship game there, and was in one there also where they won it. This is where Tua Tagovailoa, one of the top quarterbacks, came in and replaced him late in the game, and they came back and won that game. This is where he didn't play much behind Tua his junior year, and then transferred to Oklahoma, where he finished in second in the Heisman Trophy balloting in the Big 12. He had a great year. As you can see right over here, these are his completions and some of his stats right here. He did throw a lot of balls. He had a lot of attempts. His percentage is right where you want it. Look at these years here, almost 70%. And he threw for about 10,000 yards, so that's pretty good. And the thing that I really like about him is this over here, which is the TDs. I mean, look at the TDs. He had 80 passing TDs, and 32 right there is his senior year out of Oklahoma, which is why he was second to Joe Burrow in the Heisman Trophy balloting. And his quarterback rating right there is really good for his career overall, 162. You can see he was pretty good those 2 years. Didn't play much here, but did here. And that's one of the reasons I like this guy, Jalen Hurts. He does have a decent arm. He is relatively accurate, but he's a football player playing quarterback, and he's just as good at running back. So let's head over and take a look at his rushing stats along with these passing stats, and that'll show you why I like him so much. Okay, here we are looking at Jalen Hurts' rushing stats while he was in college, which is going to make him a dynamic NFL quarterback. And you can see right here, here's his rushing stats in this column here. At Alabama, he had his freshman year. These are his rushing attempts in this column. These are his yards. You can see right here, he had pretty good years. I mean, almost 1,000 yards this first 2 years, and then 1,300 yards his senior year when he finished second in the Heisman Trophy balloting. And here's the stat that I really like. It's the 20 TDs right here he had on top of the 32 throwing. That's pretty good, and that's why I really like him a lot. You can see right there he had 43 rushing touchdowns in his career on top of the 80 passing touchdowns. That's a hell of a career in college. And, you know, throwing a receiving one. But there's his career stats rushing right there in all the years he was in rushing the ball in college and yards from scrimmage and stuff. And you can see he's a player, and he's someone to be reckoned with in the NFL, especially if you're in a Dynasty league. If you're in a Redraft league, he's no more than someone you should pick up on your waiver wire, depending upon what he does in the preseason and what team drafts him. Okay, there you have it. That's it for our NFL Draft Preview Show. We gave you players at running back you need to keep an eye on, wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback to help you win a championship in 2020. If you want to win championships, you better know who's coming into the league at every position every year. I'm Buster Brown. The show's Redemption Rehab. Good luck.